So some Trailblazers fans would suggest that their team has nothing to worry about since they were the third seed in the West last season. I would disagree because the difference between them and the Nuggets, who missed the playoffs, was only 3 games. So I do think this Blazers situation is a bit interesting, and given that Damian Lillard and to a lesser extent CJ McCollum have voiced their opinions about not being the most winning team all the time, it could be some scary stuff if you're that front office. When we look at the team, I don't know how much real offensive talent there is outside of the top 2. I mean, Seth Curry is pretty good, but his ceiling is about 13 points a game, I would say. And sometimes it can even get kind of rough. You've got Evan Turner, who has been one of the most difficult players to put into an offense almost since he showed up. Outside of Brad Stevens and some flashes in Portland, it hasn't gone that well for the guy. You've got Al Farouk Aminu. Give him credit. His open three-point shot has grown to being pretty decent to where you have to care about him. He doesn't do too much else, but it's still some not bad spacing. Nurkic is actually not the best offensive player. He's a little soft around the rim. A lot of the time he chooses scoop shots or floaters over just powering into guys. You've got Myers Leonard. His three-point percentage clause dictates his shooting more so than how good of a shooter he actually is, it seems. You've got Zach Collins, or that's not Zach Collins, that's Nick Stauskas. And I think Stauskas could actually be a bit of an X factor for this team, which is crazy to say. Could Sauce Castillo actually save Portland? Now, defensively, it's a different situation. While they don't have like one elite dude, they have an assortment of just strong guys who know what they're doing. Terry Stotts knows how to coach defense, and I think it's just enough. They were 6th in defense last year. I don't know if they're going to do that again. At the same time, there have been some injuries to some guys that are going to knock certain teams down, so maybe they're still in that conversation. But they seem to have figured it out enough. Credit to CJ and Dame. Those two have made some progress as well, but along the wings and then up front, they do a decent job of just stopping the other team from scoring and not allowing them to get comfortable and all that. This is Zach Collins. He's definitely going to play, especially because they lost Ed Davis. I don't know if he can hang around physically against a lot of NBA bigs, but he's going to get the opportunity. He's talented, definitely. But this Blazers team, they better be hoping for a good season, because Dame is looking around, and I bet you he wants to stay in Portland, but if push comes to shove, he may make that tough decision. The Washington Wizards, who I will not shut up about, remain the most interesting / egotistical / kind of disappointing, but not totally disappointing when you really think about it, 45-win team ever. And I think the first place you got to look is John Wall. I know he missed about half the season last year. Even so, his defense has been regressing for the past couple of years, so if that could step up, that would be huge. It would set the precedent for the rest of this roster, which has sometimes been a little lukewarm on defending. Also, Bradley Beal needs to be the number 1 shot attempter of this team, if that's a word. He's just a better scorer than John Wall in every way, because he can make a shot from anywhere on the floor. Their shot attempts should not be lined up, okay? It should be clear who is the guy taking the majority of the attempts on this team. That should be the 2 guard, not John Wall. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but it should. You could argue Beal hasn't even hit his ceiling, and even so, he's putting up like mid-20s, and we saw how good he was when Wall went out and he had to lead their offense. He also had to play like 42 minutes a game for it to happen, but he's got the talent. Dwight Howard is a ticking time bomb, and if you have zero hope that he will swallow his pride and just do the little things, well, I wouldn't fault you for it. If he posts up 5-6 times a game, demands the ball, and then shoots some bad turnaround or hook shot or travels or whatever, or even worse, if he pouts when he doesn't get the ball, then that'll be unfortunate, because physically he still got it. I hope Scott Brooks realizes what he has in Thomas Satoransky, who has pretty much only been able to play when John Wall has been injured, outside of little bits here and there. He's just good at everything, man. He's a tall point guard who is a little better at breaking down defenses than you initially think, gifted passer, does a lot of things that don't show up in the box score. Kelly Oubre Jr. has to be a legit NBA player and not just show flashes of being one. His shooting improving would be a huge step towards that. Austin Rivers at times has looked like one of the better bench guards in the league, and other times he looks like a guy who tries way too damn hard and thinks of himself too highly. That's kind of the personification of this team. I hope Otto Porter just gets more responsibility. He's got to be able to do more than just chill in the corner, okay? Bare minimum, he's got to be moving off of screens more often. So yeah, there's a whole lot of things that could go wrong with this team. And given that they've been nearly mediocre for the last 4 seasons and their attendance has never been that great, I think the fans are beginning to feel it. So if they can break out of the mold, that would be awesome. And then finally, New Orleans Pelicans. I'm going to do my damnedest to not mention Anthony Davis for this entire thing. If we are expecting Elfrid Payton to replace what Rondo did for them in that round 1 series against the Blazers and down the stretch of last season, I think we're asking too much of the guy. On his best day, Payton looks like a pretty solid point guard who makes it work even if he's going to rough around the edges. On his worst day, he's not that great of a playmaker, can't shoot, and his defense is disappointing. So we're going to have to see with him. Julius Randle is in a similar boat. The Lakers were giving him the ball a lot. Got him up to 16 points a game, had a couple 20-point performances, real bully on the low block. He's going to have to scale that back on this Pelicans team. Decent chance he doesn't start, and a decent chance that he's a lot of the time just playing within a system. Can he do that effectively? I don't know. I mean, one time a Reddit user called him the large Dion Waiters, and I think he got away from that a little bit with the Lakers towards the end. Who knows if he can keep on keeping on. And then you just have an assortment of NBA players. Each one more, who apparently is Zach Lowe's favorite player. Darius Miller, who sometimes takes some long twos, but when he decides to shoot it from 3, it goes pretty alright. Nikola Mirotic has been the most inconsistent player in the league, or at least one of them for a while. He might be the best shooter in the league, he might be below average. Solomon Hill's at least decent on one side of the floor, but defenses often leave him wide open, and he doesn't make them pay for it that often. Yeah, the Anthony Davis clock is ticking. The guy changed agents, which I think is a red flag, but it's not a disaster. And if the Pelicans can just somehow put it all together for some decent years, maybe they could actually keep the guy. Also, shout out to Drew, who I didn't mention at all, but is a very good player.